This fresh coat of paint looks fantastic, but did you know that this thing could have been preserved indoors? In fact, if things had gone a little bit differently, this locomotive could have actually been the one that Union Pacific restored and ran on the main line for excursion services. I've learned a lot about our 610 front back here over the years, and I want to share that today. Let's check out the story of Big Boy 4023. I'll be taking a bit of a unique approach to telling this story. You'll notice that there's going to be historical photos and videos and references to the real thing, but you'll also see scenes that I've filmed with my model trains at home to kind of help fill in the gaps. And we start this story to a sad time for most rail fans. In the final days of steam, these locomotives were being towed to the deadlines by the diesels that ultimately replaced them. But thankfully, the Union Pacific Big Boys had enjoyed quite a bit of celebrity status during their service to the railroad. They were the biggest steam engines working in revenue service, and though only 25 of them were built to tackle the steepest grades of the UP main line, 8 of them were lucky enough to survive the scrapper's torch, mostly due to their well-earned fame. Some were donated to museums. One was even purchased as part of a big private collection in the Northeast, but one remained at the roundhouse they all once called home for quite a while after dieselization was through. Big Boy 4023 remained in Cheyenne, Wyoming, occupying a stall next to its articulated friend that you also might know, Union Pacific's Challenger number 3985. And if that wasn't enough star power for you, this was also the same roundhouse used to store the living legend herself, 844. Big Boy 4023's storage at the roundhouse in Cheyenne was not on accident. It had dodged the scrapper's torch not just on fame alone, but on its condition. Of the 8 remaining locomotives, it was the newest, as 4023 was built along with 4 other new Big Boys to join their older brothers answering the call of wartime freight in the 40s. It's the sole survivor of the final 5 that were built for the Union Pacific. Just 2 years prior to being retired from revenue service, 4023 had received an intensive Class 3 overhaul, which put the engine in prime operating condition. In 1959, it was stored inside the shops and even rolled out in 1960 for a special event with the National Railway Historical Society. It joined 3985 and 844 for the festivities, as the 3 massive locomotives were lined up for photographs before 844 departed with an excursion train full of rail fans. After that event, 4023 and 3985 returned to their storage in the roundhouse out of the public eye. But by the mid-70s, 2 key moves were made to set these locomotives down their respective paths. Union Pacific's headquarters were and still remain in Omaha, Nebraska. So the decision was made to move 4023 to be displayed in front of their diesel shops on the north side of town. They also moved Challenger 3985 to be displayed outside of the Cheyenne depot. In the case of 4023, the display in Omaha would prove to be its permanent home, whereas Challenger would inspire volunteers from Union Pacific to restore her to operating condition just a few years later. I like to think that if their roles were reversed, they would have jumped at the thought of restoring 4023 instead, but I don't think it's likely that UP would have done that. Cheyenne already has Big Boy 4004 in nearby Holiday Park displayed, so it made sense to display a Challenger, plus, Omaha being UP's home, it only seems right to have their largest locomotive displayed there. Still, to think that one simple moment in its history could have changed things quite a bit is fascinating to me. 4023's display at the Omaha Shops was pretty neat though. It could be easily viewed from the nearby Interstate 480 bridge passing over, and they even had hooked up some steam hoses from the shops to mimic steam and smoke coming out of the Big Boy, almost as if it were ready for its next line of freight cars to haul. But as time went on, and the shops moved out of Omaha, 2 things needed to happen. The ecological disaster left behind by the shops meant that the city of Omaha was looking to clean up and reinvent that part of town. After a massive cleanup effort along the riverfront property, plans were made for a new entertainment district to revitalize the area. Big Boy 4023 was moved off-site, thankfully before demolition began, and it was displayed on a siding along Abbott Drive in Omaha, a road linking the city to its airport. It was joined there by Centennial DD40X number 6900, which had recently been donated to the city of Omaha. The two sat on roadside rails for what they called Kenefick Park, but this was a far cry from the Kenefick Park that we know of now. There really wasn't much here, and as you can see, there still isn't. The rails these two were moved on had been cut off from the spur of sidings, making their way into an industrial district on the north side of the city. This is actually where I first discovered 4023 as a kid when my family moved here in the late 90s. I remember my dad taking us to visit these two and wondered why on earth this gigantic steam engine had such a short, stumpy smokestack. As the site cleanup wrapped up, the new convention center was planned, and early designs actually included utilizing this lone stretch of track to transport Big Boy 4023 and Centennial 6900 from the outdoor roadside display to being indoors as part of the long entryway to the convention center. This provides more of an explanation as to why the location where these two were displayed outdoors almost seemed temporary. But alas, plans changed, and the new convention center was completed, leaving these two locomotives out in the cold. I'm not sure why or when the plans changed, but it would have been really neat to see these two preserved inside the convention center, especially considering that 4023 would have essentially been returned to the same spot where it was displayed when the shops once stood here. My son and I did a bit of a scavenger hunt comparing Google Earth satellite imagery from the 90s to now to figure out where the shops would have stood. Only a single line remains that moves behind the convention center, but this is also where Big Boy 4014 moves whenever Union Pacific displays it at their home plate siding in front of the College Baseball World Series that's hosted here every June. Big boys have been here before. However, another plan was set in motion to move both 4023 and Centennial 6900 to a more prominent place. Before that move could take place, rails were laid again to retrieve 4023 and 6900 from the Abbott Drive location, and they were towed to the rails behind an iconic location for the city, Omaha's Union Station. Acting as a museum for the city history and heritage, this amazing place even has a covered rail line that stores Pullman cars, a caboose, and a 10-wheeler number 1243 that still rest on the rails connected to the main line of UP. This is one of my son's favorite places to visit, and we love watching trains pass by through the windows, but for a short while, you could see something else in the yard. Yes, Big Boy 4023 and Centennial 6900 were stored in the middle of this once busy yard, waiting for a new Kenefick Park to be completed. 6900 was actually towed to Kansas City by its younger brother, 6936, which at the time was in excursion service for the Union Pacific. It received a fresh paint job from the shops there and was towed back to the line behind Omaha Union Station to prepare for their big journey to the hillside. In a rare moment, this is also the last time Big Boy 4023 would occupy the same space as its old roommate back in its storage days in Wyoming. Yes, that's Challenger number 3985 with an excursion train in the early 2000s stopped next to Union Station as 4023 waits for its big move to the new Kenefick Park. Up until this point, both Centennial 6900 and Big Boy 4023 had been towed on rails to their display points, but the wizards behind the new Kenefick Park design had a much more ambitious plan that would involve the first and only time a Big Boy would be moved by truck. In March of 2005, after proper site preparations were made, Big Boy 4023 was hoisted onto a custom-made trailer in the middle of the yard and driven through the streets of Omaha. One of the trailer wheels actually failed while crossing some of the tracks during transit, but the operation continued onward. Street signal wires and cables needed to be hoisted by cherry pickers ahead of the truck as it moved 600 tons of legendary metal down closed streets. Finally, when there was no more pavement, the trailer was turned up the hillside by construction equipment, positioned onto the rails waiting on the new site, and she was welded in place. In December of that year, Centennial DD40X 6900 joined Big Boy to complete the display that now welcomes I-80 westbound drivers to Omaha, Nebraska. It's hard to believe that these two have been up here for 20 years now. Mother Nature has not been kind to these, but they still do look impressive up here. The park is open to the public and accessible from the parking lot to Lauritsen Gardens nearby. So as long as the gates to the gardens are open, you can take the stairs up the hill to meet these two massive modern marvels yourself. We come up here frequently, so don't be surprised if you run into a dad and his young rail fan with a dadified sticker for you. I've been coming up here for many years. It was actually one of the first places my wife and I visited together back when we were dating. And now it's become almost a monthly thing for my son and I to visit and pack a lunch to enjoy while we hang out with these engines. This is likely 4023's final resting place, given the effort that it took to get up here in the first place. But as long as something's done to keep it in good shape, to help it weather the storms, I'm hoping it'll be up here for a while. As you can see, they just finished another cosmetic restoration to help it survive on the hillside, so it's wonderful to see it shining in the sun once again. All right, so we're here. How'd they do on the repaint?
Great.
Do you love seeing it up there?
Yeah.
Did we do something special to celebrate this? Tell them about it.
We brought our 4023 Lionel.
Nice. Oh man, I can't think of a better way to celebrate this thing getting repainted than by bringing ours out here and running it. We've never done this before, have we?
Yeah.
That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Should we do that again with a different train?
Yeah.
What are we bringing next time?
4014.
I had a feeling. I hope you enjoyed the story about 4023's career in its retirement. There's certainly some what-if moments that make me wonder how things would be different. But honestly, I'm glad it's here in Omaha for my son and I to enjoy anytime we want. And it's even on our rails at home to enjoy thanks to some tinkering I did with a Lionel train. That was a fun project, so check that out if you haven't already. I gotta thank you for watching and encourage you to subscribe if you haven't already. We're having all sorts of fun with trains, so we hope you stick around. Leave a like, tell us your favorite part of the story, or if you learned something new. Maybe you've got some additional details you want to share with us about this. Be sure to share this story with your friends, and we'll see you on the next one.